Welcome back to another video. Like, share, subscribe. So today was the meeting in Washington. They had a congressional hearing today with the four mayors. Johnston, I thought his approval rate was 14%, but apparently uh the senator called him out and his approval rate went down to 6.6. He awful anyway. They need to get him out of there. Y'all gonna have to stop voting for people just because they black. It's about policy because they've been selling us down the river, um, for these last 20 years, and for the past 50, they ain't did nothing. This ain't the 60s or the 70s anymore. They sell us out all the time. That's the black boule. But anyway, so it was Adams. They did go in on Adams' criminal case being dropped by Pam Bondi and the Trump administration, and so he got grilled. But they weren't hard on him for his sanctuary policy because he was the smart one. He was willing to work with Tom Homan and met, and now they have a policy that's going forward as far as you know, um, ICE is now on Rikers Island where they can have free access to any individual who has an ICE retainer or is arrested on criminal charges, and they just grab them and ship them on out. So Mayor Adams was the smart one, but Wu and Johnston, and I'll show y'all the videos. But I thought it was real interesting because I want them all to go back, every last one of them. If you came in 2021 and you walked through a jungle, you need to leave. But here are some takeaways from the congressional hearing today. Let's see. The mayors of four sanctuary cities face tough questions from lawmakers about their policies toward immigrants and how they work with immigration and customs enforcement at a House Oversight and Government Reform Committee on Wednesday. New York Mayor Eric Adams, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, and Denver Mayor Mike Johnston, all Democrats, were grilled by the Republican lawmakers today on their city's policies that limit cooperation with ICE. And they also schooled them on federal law. Federal law trumps state, local, county law. It trumps that. And so they got schooled today, and so they got spanked. And we're going to see one senator says she turning over the three, not Adams, but Johnston, Wu, and Johnson over the Pam Bondi for investigation. That's right. That's right. So they need to be scared. Um, Some even accused them of violating federal law and raised the possibility of criminal charges, which is what I just said. I just didn't know that was the next sentence. The committee is led by Representative James Comer, Republican of Kentucky, who issued a fiery statement setting the tone for the hearing at times, which devolves in a yelling match. The pro-illegal alien mayors of Boston, Chicago, Denver, and New York City have implemented reckless illegal policies that shield criminal aliens from federal immigration enforcement and endanger public safety, he said. On March 5th, the House Oversight Committee will hold sanctuary mayors publicly accountable for refusing to abide by the law and placing American lives at risk. The hearing came in President Donald Trump's efforts to crack down on immigration to the U.S. and deport people who are in the country illegally. The Justice Department has said its plans to be aggressive against Democratic-led sanctuary cities and has threatened to withhold federal funds from cities that refuse to cooperate on immigration enforcement. That remind me of that doggone Lita James, the AG, Attorney General in New York City. They froze her funds. They broke. And she filed motion after motion. That's the one who kept bringing them charges in Alvin Bragg against Trump, those trumped up charges, and begging and begging and begging. Y'all gonna go broke. Y'all better leave New York. He not giving you a dime. How you play him on a private transaction between a bank and a customer, and the loan was paid back. That was one. You made him post $500 million bail on that one. Then you get him on a bookkeeping error on his taxes for Stormy Daniels of $130,000 payment. He put it as a business expense. His accountant did, not him, instead of a legal expense. And y'all got 34 charges out of that. Bullshit. I'm so sick of y'all. I'm not voting for anybody just because they black. Period. It's all about policy. Because y'all have sold us down the river. And at this point, I will not vote for another Democrat. Y'all pitiful. Just pitiful. I'm just wondering, how much money are y'all making? How much money is George Soros giving y'all to sell your people out like this, the American people out, because it's not black and white, even though you stuff the illegals only in the black community, black and brown community. Anyway, what actually is a sanctuary city? Sanctuary city is a broad term referring to jurisdiction with policies that limit cooperation with federal immigration enforcement actions, but the term is needlessly defined. These cities often refuse to honor ICE detainer requests, which ask local jails to hold individuals beyond their scheduled release for immigration enforcement. Many also restrict local law enforcement from inquiring about or sharing immigration status. Some provide legal aid and public services such as health care and education without requiring proof of legal status. Stop, whoever that is. Supporters argue these policies build trust, encouraging undocumented immigrants to report crimes and seek assistance without fear of deportation. Critics claim they allow individuals, including those with criminal records, to evade immigration enforcement. Comer opened the questioning period of the hearing by asking each mayor a yes or no question on whether they consider their city a sanctuary city. Three of the mayors offered qualifying answers. Folks use the term differently. I tell you what Denver does. I'll take that as a yes, Comer said, interrupting. Chicago has a 40-year policy of being a welcoming city. I can't stand that Mayor Johnston. He is awful. Johnston said in response, Boston is a safe city, Wu said. To each, Comer said he would take the answer as a yes. Adams was the only one who offered a straightforward answer. Based on our classification, yes. In their prepared remarks to the open hearing, the mayor spoke about their general approach to immigration enforcement and rejected the argument that they are violating any federal laws. Well, after they broke down the federal laws, each and every state is violating those laws. To be clear, a sanctuary city classification does not mean our city will ever be safe haven for violent criminals, Adams said. It also does not give New York City the authority to violate federal immigration laws. To the contrary, New York City will always comply with city, state, and federal laws as it does now. Johnston said Denver welcomed about 42,000 migrants over 18 months, the largest per capita influx of any city some unprepared for the cold weather. The city helped settle them, and there are now no migrant encampments or shelters open, and crime numbers still decline. When buses started showing up filled with migrants, some in my city were afraid, just like I'm sure some of your constituents are afraid, he said. They were afraid about crime and homelessness and worried about what these new people will take away from them. I understand that fear. And the truth is, people who are new to this country do good and bad just like all of us. Well, first of all, if you walk to 10,000 countries and you came through a jungle, you walk through a jungle to seek asylum, you go to the next country that's closest to you, which would be Colombia. You don't walk through a jungle and walk through 10,000 countries to come to America and think we're supposed to take care of you. That's a lie. Because we can't, no American can go to any other country and do what they did and get room, board, shelter, and you don't speak the language and you don't know the laws. And you brought your demons and your customs across the border. We don't know what demons you dealing with. Especially, and no pun intention when I say Haitians, because your religion is voodoo. You carrying heavy demons. And on that note, you know, and it's a cultural shock for both sides. But in defense of the Haitians, there is a civil war. They are actually the legitimate asylum seekers because Haiti is in a civil war. And Darfur, Africa, if you come from that region, is a civil war. That's when you seek asylum. The Ukrainians that came here, and you ain't seen none of them white folk in no line needing a hotel or anything in there. But it's a war. That is how you seek asylum, not economics because you need a job. But anyway, well, I lost my train of thought. Oh, we dealing with the Denver mayor. He said Denver often works with ICE and has notified them to pick up someone in their custody 1,226 times over the last 7 years. But they only do that when they get a warrant. And that's a problem. They have to actually get a warrant for Denver to help. Johnston says Chicago is safer due to its welcome city ordinance that ensures police are focused on law enforcement priorities rather than immigration law. You a lie. You lied through the whole thing. I can't stand you. You the worst. I had no idea your approval rating dropped to 6%. Your constituents are not happy with you. Put simply, any actions that amplify fears of deportations make Chicago more dangerous. Finally, Wu said the Boston Police Department collaborates with state and federal law enforcement when there is a criminal warrant. But state law restricts law enforcement agencies from detaining people solely for alleged civil immigration violations. This constant collaboration with state and federal law enforcement is a crucial part of making Boston the safest major city in the country and also one of the most expensive cities along with New York and California. But anyway, LA. Multiple Republican Congress members raised the possibility that the mayors could face criminal charges such as obstruction of justice for violating federal law. Representative Lauren Boebert of Colorado, Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio, and Representative Scott Perry of Pennsylvania questioned the mayors on the degree to which they work with federal immigration policies, and whether they were violating federal law. If it were up to me, I'd be considering referring charges to Representative Gary Palmer, Republican of Alabama. We got a problem here. When we decide that there are some laws that we will obey and some laws that we won't. Americans fed up with this betrayal of oath and you'll be held accountable, said Representative Clay Higgins of Louisiana. And they should, because they violate federal law. Representative Andy Biggs, Republican of Arizona, held up signs reading sanctuary cities are illegal, with text from two federal laws relating to communication between agencies and harboring undocumented immigrants. Every one of you is exposed to criminal culpability here. Oh my God. This dog ain't barked all day. Representative Anna Paulina Luna says she will be referring the mayors to the Justice Department for prosecution, earning several surprise gasps from the audience, and she did just that. I'm not doing that in an effort to bully you guys, but I do believe your policies are hurting the American people. And she also said, not only is it hurting American people, but it's hurting the immigrants as well of giving them false hope. In turn, the mayors challenged Congress to take actions to make cities safer and to reform the country's immigration policies. Under questioning, Representative Paul Gosar Wu said it was Congress' role to pass an immigration law and question the false narrative that immigrants cause crime. If you want to make a safe pass gun reform, stop cutting Medicaid. Medic Stop cutting cancer research. Stop cutting funds for veterans. She said they ain't cutting no funds for veterans. This is what will make our city safe. Now, the mayors generally face sharp, fiery questions from Republicans and more open ended questions from Democrats, but that dynamic was flipped for Adams. Yeah, they was on that tail. They was on him about them charges being dropped by the DOJ, Pam Bondi. They was on him. Adams received some praise from Republicans for his willingness to work with the border czar Tom Homan, his attacks on former President Joe Biden's immigration policies, and his calls to change the city's sanctuary policies. Meanwhile, he faced tough questions from the Democrats. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. About the controversies surrounding his federal corruption charges. And AOC, Alexander, got on my nerves. That's why she under investigation right now for teaching the illegals how to avoid ICE. I can't stand her. She need to go to, and they put her dumb ass right back in office. Anyway, like I said, it'd be a long, long time. I'm only voting on policy. I'm not voting on color. Just because you black, you will not just get my vote. No, you won't, because y'all sell out. And that's it. It'd be a long time in hell probably before I vote Democratic. Period. They awful. Anyway, the Justice Department last month ordered federal prosecutors to drop federal corruption charges against Adams so he can better help the immigration crackdown. The directive led to a series of high profile resignations, including the acting U.S. Attorney for Southern District of New York, um, who said New York City mayor's attorneys repeatedly urged what amounted to a quid pro quo to help Trump on immigration if the case was dropped. Representative Robert Garcia, the Democrat of California, called on Adams to resign. He did. Further, Representative Gerald Connolly, Democrat of Virginia and ranking member of the committee, asked directly whether he had any quid pro quo deal with the Trump administration. I think I was extremely clear. No quid pro, no agreement. I did nothing wrong but serve the people of New York City. At other points, Adams declined to respond to questions about his criminal charges out of uh, defiance to Judge Dale Ho. No, he said refer to Judge Dale Ho, the judge overseeing his case. After Representative Laura Gillian, Democrat of New York City, said she has no confidence in him and called for his resignation, Adams brushed her off. But you don't live in New York City. You live on Long Island. You don't vote for me, he said. I guess he told her. Comer and Representative Ayanna Presley. I can't stand her. Oh my God, that's the black one with the bald head. I can't stand her at all. They yelled over each other in a tense moment at the meeting. The incident began when Presley attempted to read into record news articles comparing the crime rates of immigrants and native born Americans. As she began to read the first article, Comer admitted it into record without objection and asked Presley to move on to the next, cutting her off from reading the full title. She continued reading the title of the first article, and the two began to yell at each other. Let me see. The trend of you all trying to get thrown out of the committee so you can get on MSNBC is going to end, Comer said. We're not going to put up with it. This is my procedural right as a member of this committee, Presley said. I will take particular umbrage as a survivor of sexual violence. I will answer into record. This is my right. Now, what that have to do with her being violent, a survivor of sexual violence? Just too dramatic. Comer insisted she stop and directed Representative Sir. Oh God, he's Indian with his last name is 25 letters. He began questioning. Then Melanie Stansberg read the same article titles and leading the Comer to accuse her of filibustering. Mace asked explicit questions, one of the more aggressive and explicit line of questioning from Nancy Mace. When an illegal alien rapes a woman, do you believe you're on the right side of history? She asked each mayor. No, they said it's obviously horrible, Wu said. Then why are you letting rapists our word back onto the streets of Boston? This is not true. This is not what's happening in Boston. Mace often added her own snarky sides to their response. Hold on. Hello? Hello? Yeah. Yeah, I'm live too. Yeah, just give me some Funyuns and a pop. That's it. No, I already got one. Hmm. Sorry, y'all. I apologize. All of the mayors here today are actively working to harm the American people you represent, May said at another point. You all have blood on your hands. Mm, it was good. I watched this whole thing all day. Let me see. I thought I just took all that. Oh, it's on the other phone. Hold on, y'all. Let me bring this up, but this phone is on low battery. I wonder why it's not showing up. I guess I didn't merge them together. Um, yep, okay, here we go. Here we go. And I get to delete this right off my phone. Let me see if this article has anything new in it. So I'm just going to comb it. Damn, I got a lot on. Okay, we talked about who the witnesses were. Don't need to go over that. The sanctuary city refers to a broad range of policies that limit local cooperation with federal immigration agents. The mayors argue the policies are crucial for ensuring undocumented immigrants report crimes and access city services without fear of deportation. Republicans accuse the mayors of defying President Trump's immigration agenda and releasing dangerous criminals into the streets. And yes, they have. Yes, they have. Because New York City released the man for petty theft in New York who killed Lake and Riley. And he went to Georgia, killed Lake and Riley, and now he's doing life in prison. Here are the updates. Let me see. What are the updates? Let me see if there's anything new. Oh, here go AOC. I can't stand her. Alexandria, of course, she's so dumb. I can't stand her. Anyway, she really dug into Eric Adams about him being his charges being dropped by the Trump administration. She really digged into him. She's no longer. They kicked her off this committee last year. She's no longer a member of this committee. She asked Adams about his meeting with the president and his lawyers meeting with the prosecutors. This is important not just for the city of New York, but the people of the United States of America, adding that what is being alleged is generally not just about what may or may not have occurred from the mayor's office, but what is happening in the DOJ more broadly. And that corrupt DOJ under the Biden administration was awful. And then she brought up about the prosecutors who resigned, when the charges came. She brought that up against Adams. She was pointing to the Republicans who suggested as well that the prosecutorial power at the Department of Justice may be influencing what is occurring. Instead of carrying that out and carrying out the erosion of the Department of Justice, they would have referred to give up their entire careers, referring to prosecutors, 7 lifelong public servants involved in law enforcement who resigned. They did resign. The New York Democrat called the developments a 4 alarm fire that everyone must be paying attention to, raising the question of whether Adams' interaction with the Justice Department were an isolated case or indicative of a broader pattern in their jurisdictions. She did, she got on him. And then she said, for a party that talks about states' rights, municipal rights, we must defend, yes, the rule of law, including in the Department of Justice, she said. I can't stand her. Then Taylor Greene, a lot of people don't like her, but she the one that told Jasmine Crockett to go outside. She was gonna beat her up. That was so funny. Marjorie Greene don't play out of Georgia. Now she was talking about Laken Riley, who was murdered by an immigrant who was in the U.S. illegally and had been detained, like I said earlier, in New York City. I don't know why this thing makes so much noise. In New York City, the 22-year-old nursing student death in Georgia became a rally cry. Oh Lord, a rallying cry for Republicans on campaign trail last year. Adams called it a despicable crime, saying he believes people like that should be held accountable. The mayor added he has advocated to stop this revolving door in criminal justice system. When Green asked whether Adams will advocate to end sanctuary policies in New York, Adams said he has made it clear the portions of the law he believes should be altered to prevent crimes like Lake and Riley of taking place. Then we have Dave Minion, a California Democrat. He pretty much said that Adams should resign. I think I said that. Jasmine Crockett, I can't stand her. That's who Marjorie Green wanted to beat up. Told us go out, let's step outside. She asked Eric Adams whether the president is weaponizing the Justice Department against local governments. At, the man ain't been in office but 43 days. Adams appeared to receive advice from a man sitting behind him before answering the question. That was his lawyer. He then deferred to the judge overseeing the case as he did earlier in the hearing. Then Luna told them, "You all speak about broken immigration system, and yet you guys are aiding and abetting illegal aliens." Luna said, adding that open border policies harm people on both sides. "I do not think you guys are bad people, but I think you are ideologically misled," which is why she said she will be criminally referring the mayors to the Justice Department for investigation. Yes. Luna added that she wasn't making the move to bully you guys, but she said she believes their policies are hurting the American people. If you guys continue doing what you're doing, you're not going to help anyone. A criminal referral does not require Justice Department to open an investigation, but serve as a formal notice that a lawmaker or committee believes criminal conduct may have occurred. So the Indian with like 25 letters, I can't say his name, he pressed Adams about the meeting that he had with Trump. And Mayor Adams said they did not talk about immigration um, or his case. Now, Representative Mace told him all the mayors here today are actively working to harm the American people you represent. You all have blood on your hands. Mace asked the mayor whether breaking into our country is against the law and whether it's against the law illegal immigrants convicted of crimes to be released back into public, among other questions she framed as yes or no answers. You guys don't sound very confident today. And she interjected when Anderson responded to one question. You're having the hardest time today. She asked the mayors, do they hate Donald Trump more than they love their country and whether they love illegal aliens more than their fellow countrymen. I thought I thought she was on it because they've been putting the illegals over American people who are suffering. Okay, we talked about Garcia already. I'm not bringing that up. Adams says New York State has spent $6.9 billion to care for migrants over the last 4 years. Unbelievable. Chicago mayor said the city has spent 1% of the budget since 2022, about 18.7 billion. Unbelievable. Oh, 1% of the budget, so about $1 billion. My bad. Denver's mayor said he spent 79 million over the last 2.5 years. Boston mayor did not know. Taxpayers have been bearing the brunt of the massive wave of illegal aliens who have entered the United States, Fox said. The Biden administration declared taxpayers and hardworking Americans collateral damage in pursuit of open borders. Sure did. Yes, indeed. Boston Woo says false narrative about immigrants in the is undermining safety. She did say that many times. I don't like her either. I don't know where that came from. My son TV just got loud and he not even here. Oh, they must be playing that. Oh my God. Jim Jordan, he talked about the alleged gang member Adrian Gonzalez, who was released from county jail, and this was in Denver, and that why he he was not he they told ICE an hour that he was being released. They gave ICE an hour to get him, and they literally had to get him in a parking lot, and it took 6 of them to detain this man, and he hurt a law enforcement. They were forced to arrest him in public where he assaulted officers, and he did. It took 6 of them to get him down. ICE often issues what are known as immigration detainers or requests for local law enforcement to hold a defendant with an immigration case or notify the agency if they plan to release them. Many sanctuary cities do not honor retainers, and that is the problem. That is against the law. The mayor said that their cities follow the law, outlining how their local law enforcement collaborates with federal agents, and that's a lie. The point that we got to iron out today is that we have cooperation. It is federal law to turn over those illegal criminals to ICE, and we have heard reports, and many of you have said publicly that you are willing to obstruct that. And yes, they did. And the Boston mayor kept saying how they the safest city in America in Boston, blah, 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 blah. Mayor Johnston kept talking about how the crime rates have dropped since he been in office and all this and that. I can't stand him. Violent crime is down in Chicago. The city ended 2020 with its lowest homicide rate in 5 years. The city is also safer because of our welcoming city ordinance. That law makes sure that the city's police resources are focused on local priorities. In fact, 40 years of Chicago's leaders have recognized that our policies towards civil immigration matters help to prevent and solve crimes. That's a lie. So when Denver started receiving illegals, they were receiving 11 to 12 buses a day. They had to deal with 42,000 illegals. The question Denver faced was what to do with a mom and 2 kids dropped on the streets of our city with no warm clothes, no food, and no place to stay. Let them figure it out. Johnson said as mayor, he was obligated to protect the health and safety of everyone in Denver. He outlined that what started as the largest encampment in Denver history, with more than 200 migrant families living in shelters, now stands as zero migrant encampments in the city. In the midst of this, migrants did not bring a wave of crime to Denver. The Denver mayor said America must acknowledge the full story of immigration into this country. Thank you. Adams defends city stance toward immigration in opening statement. Adams cited also declining crime rates in New York City and said he was appearing on Wednesday to testify how the city can continue to reduce crime even as a sanctuary city. Danye, turn that down. I'm sorry, y'all. I cannot have a city where parents are afraid to send children to school, where children are sleeping in the streets, creating the potential for child exploitation or sex trafficking. Turn it down. If an undocumented person refuses to seek medical care until they have a medical emergency, our city healthcare system will be strained. And if an undocumented person witnesses a crime but is afraid to call 911 for fear being turned over to federal authorities. I don't have to talk about calling. Talked about her. Okay, I ain't got to say that. Okay, we talked about that. Now, the DOJ, Department of Justice, has threatened to prosecute local officials who do not comply with immigration agenda. Well, it's Title 8. In the Constitution that says, excuse me, federal law trumps local, state, and county law. It does. And the Trump administration withholding funds for those in sanctuary city governments. And they brought up when Mayor Johnston said he'll be willing to go to jail for these illegals. He quickly changed that one time home and said he don't have a problem putting him in jail. Okay, we talked about what are sanctuary cities. Yep, and these mayors will be held accountable. All right, let's get into these videos. Let me put that back on the charger so we can end it. I think, oh, yep, all of this is today, so this should be real easy. Mm-mm-mm-mm. All right, here we go. Brandon Johnston, worst mayor in America.
Brandon Johnston is in Washington getting ready to testify before Congress about Chicago's immigration policies. The mayors of Chicago, New York, Boston, and Denver were all summoned to testify before the Republican-controlled Oversight Committee. The hearing is scheduled for Wednesday. The Trump administration has sued Chicago and other cities, saying their status as sanctuary cities violates federal law. And that testimony is part of a pivotal week for the mayor. He'd like to be talking about a reduction in crime rather than sitting through this spectacle in D.C. Joining us now is the mayor's chief of staff, Cristina Pasiones-Zayas. Thanks for being with us. We understand that Mayor Johnston's already in Washington prepping for that testimony. Do you expect he's going to get into a debate with Republican senators over immigration policy, or kind of simply state, hey, I'm following local laws that predate me?
That's precisely it. He is there to defend Chicago and Chicago's values and the legacy of standing in those values. He is about following municipal law as well as state law. And the Welcoming City Ordinance, as you know, predates the Johnston administration. The Illinois Trust Act was actually passed and introduced before Mayor Johnston was in office, and actually had bipartisan support with Governor Rauner. These are two pieces of legislation that, as the executive of the largest city in the state, he is abiding by.
And if the mayor were in Chicago, he'd be delivering a community update this month that focuses on crime reduction. Murders and shootings are at their lowest level since 2019. I think overall violent crime is down about 20% so far this year. I wonder what you all attribute that to.
Yeah, so when Mayor Johnston came into office, he established the Mayor's Office of Community Safety, led by Deputy Mayor Darian Gatewood, who immediately got to work to galvanize support on the ground to develop a place-based, people-driven strategy known as the People's Plan for Community Safety. It's data-driven, and it identifies where we have the greatest increase in crime and how we can develop comprehensive strategies that are localized so that community members can help partner and support law enforcement and ensuring that we are investing in critical resources and taking comprehensive approaches to addressing crime as well as violence.
The mayor also narrowly won passage of his $800 million borrowing plan. I do wonder why, at a time when the White House is threatening to turn off the flow of federal money to cities like Chicago, is it the right time to be spending more?
I think it's actually a move in anticipation that should federal funding be pooled, we do have access to capital, and we're able to continue to invest in the critical services and infrastructure that our city is dependent upon. That is streets that are paved, that is bridges that are sound, that is lampposts that work. These are kind of the bread and butter of municipal government, and the expectation that the city of Chicago.
Okay, I'm tired of her.
State has underestimated the amount of money that they spent on migrant health care, which is also sending our state budget into a $2.2 billion deficit.
And we are back, y'all. Thank you for watching today. Go ahead and hit that like button, people.
I thought this was hold on. I thought this was about the congressional. So let's get to this. Oh no, I'm gonna end with this one. I'm going to do that one last because she said she referring them for charges. Here go this pitiful mayor.
Mayor Johnston, how about you? How many, according to my records, you have welcomed 51,648 illegal aliens to your sanctuary city. So I don't ask you, sanctuary from what?
If you're referring to the number of individuals that were bused from Governor Abbott without any coordination, the 52,000 individuals that were seeking asylum, those individuals were bused to us. I passed a bus ordinance to work to coordinate with the governor of Texas. He refused to do that. But that transfer of individuals was the result of the governor of Texas, not the result of a welcoming city ordinance.
Welcoming city ordinance. So you're not welcoming these people that came here illegally?
The individuals that were bused to us from the border.
They were not welcome in Chicago? You didn't welcome them? You didn't provide them sanctuary?
So the welcoming city ordinance is pretty straightforward. It allows for our local law enforcement to focus on local policies, and that's why we're seeing a decline in violence.
So you don't care about federal law enforcement policies, only local policies.
We comply with all laws. What I do care about is this body, Washington, passing comprehensive immigration.
So let me ask you this. Chicago residents reported 28,443 violent crimes during 2024 alone. cases of aggravated assault rising to the highest level in 2 decades. Now, also, state funds, $160 million were issued to illegal alien job assistance shelters in Chicago. You're the mayor of Chicago. Do you think that your residents or the residents of your state should be paying for that more than they should be paying for their own needs, their own roads, their own public safety? I mean, who elected you? The people that came illegally, whether they were sent to you or not, or the people that reside in Chicago? Who elected you? And who do you serve?
The people of Chicago elected me as the 57th mayor of the city of Chicago.
Right, but you serve the illegals.
All the residents of the city of Chicago.
Illegal or not, criminal or not. How many of the 662,566 illegal aliens with criminal histories that ICE has reported are now residing in Chicago?
Someone will have to get back with you with that number.
Do you take immigration information from criminals as they're arrested and processed? Do you take immigration information?
Our local law enforcement focuses on getting all violent individuals.
Do you determine whether they're here legally, what their immigration status is as a function of your justice?
Gentleman, time's expired. Please feel free to answer the question, Mayor.
The Welcome in City ordinance ensures that our local residents
you stumbling.
Communicate and trust local law enforcement to ensure that criminals and crime is being addressed. And that's why violent crime has gone down in the city of Chicago. Thank you very much.
Chair now
Mr. Chairman, I return my request.
Awful. Just awful. Awful.
As myself, to begin questions for 5 minutes. I have limited time, so I want to start with a simple yes or no question. And I'm going to hold you all to that because after the first question, then we'll allow for a little more time. But Mayor Johnston, in 2017, Denver prohibited city officials, including corrections officers, from assisting and cooperating with any investigation, detention, or arrest procedures related to federal immigration laws. The city also stated that federal immigration authorities shall not be granted access or allowed to use the secure areas of any city or county jail. Mayor Johnston, is Denver a sanctuary city?
A lot of folks use that term.
Yes or no?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Folks use that term differently. I can tell you what Denver does. We do not.
Okay, I take that as a yes. Mayor Johnson, no, yes or no? I take that as a yes. Mayor Johnson, on March 10th, 2023, you posted on X that Chicago must lead and live by the promise to be a sanctuary city. Is Chicago a sanctuary city?
A 40-year policy of being a welcoming city.
Yes.
A 40-year policy of a welcoming city.
Mayor Wu, in November 2024, you gave an interview noting that you served on the city council a decade ago when the Boston Trust Act was first passed. You said in that interview that in terms of Boston's policy, there is a prohibition on resources and personnel going to enforce civil immigration detainers, meaning Boston police and other departments cannot cooperate with ICE when it comes to detaining on civil warrants. Mayor, is Boston a sanctuary city?
Boston is a safe city.
I take that as a yes. And Mayor Adams, on November 12, 2024, you said, quote, this is a sanctuary city, but I must comment that you have, of the witnesses today of the major cities, you have publicly stated that you were willing to work with ICE on detaining the most criminal illegals, and I want to publicly thank you for that. But my question to you, sir, is New York City a sanctuary city?
Based on our classification, yes.
Okay. Last year, in a Boston suburb, an illegal alien raped and impregnated his 14-year-old daughter while living in a shelter for illegal aliens. Mayor Wu, under Boston law, would you turn this criminal over to ICE on a detainer?
Whenever there's a criminal warrant, Boston police enforce that and hold people accountable.
So would you turn that criminal over to ICE?
This happened outside the city of Boston, but I can tell you in the city, whenever someone commits a crime, whenever there's a criminal warrant, we hold them accountable. If ICE deems that they are dangerous enough to obtain a criminal warrant, and the Boston police will enforce it.
Will you turn that criminal over to ICE?
No,
Follow the laws.
I
And
take
we
that
make
they
as
have to
sure
have a warrant.
that everyone.
In Chicago, an illegal alien who is a suspected member of a violent foreign gang who was brought into custody for his potential involvement in a murder. He was released when Cook County declined to press charges. This illegal alien is also facing charges for kidnapping and sexually assaulting his former girlfriend last year. Now he's on the streets. Mayor Johnston, under Chicago law, would you turn this criminal over to ICE on a detainer?
Our local law enforcement works hard every day to get criminals off the streets of Chicago.
Would you
And-
turn that criminal over to ICE? That's the problem. That's one of the topics of this conversation. That's one of the problems we've heard from Tom Hammond and from the Homeland Security is that in your cities, when someone's apprehended for a crime and ICE is now with this new federal policy wanting to come in and deport the criminal alien, that you will not cooperate with ICE. Will you turn that criminal over to ICE?
And we do not harbor criminals. Our local police department. works
That
hard
is
to
a lie.
ensure
That's
that
a
the
lie.
city of
Quit
Chicago,
Yes or
lying.
no? Will you turn the criminal over to ICE?
With a criminal warrant from the federal government, our local law enforcement repeatedly collaborates with federal agents.
So you're saying publicly today, you will turn that alien over to ICE in a safe place like a jail and not turn him out on the street and say, here you go, ICE, good luck. You will turn that criminal over to ICE.
With a criminal warrant, as we have done for 40
Should
years.
that criminal be turned over to ICE?
With a
Mayor?
criminal warrant,
Mm,
they are
mm,
subject
mm.
to the federal laws, and that includes deportation.
My time has expired, but again, the point that we've got to iron out today is that we have to have cooperation. It is federal law to turn over those illegal criminals to ICE. And we've heard reports, and many of you have said publicly, that you are going to obstruct that. That is against the law, and we're going to hear more about that today. Now,
Facts. It is against the law. Well, let me get rid of this.
Mayor Johnston, is Denver a sanctuary city?
Folks use that term differently. I can tell you what Denver does. We do not.
Okay, I take that as a yes. Mayor,
No,
So much at stake. At the end of this, lawmakers Johnston stayed calm about state and city law enforcement, or ICE. These are so-called sanctuary into our city.
Now, after 5 hours of testimony, hearing wrapped up late this afternoon.
Scripps News Group's Patrick Terpstra joins us live from Washington with the key takeaways. Patrick, a lot to unpack here.
Absolutely, Jacqueline and Shannon. And so what is so important to realize is that the mayors of Denver, but also Boston, Chicago, New York, they all have something in common. They come from cities that restrict exactly how much they can cooperate with immigration and customs enforcement, or ICE. These are so-called sanctuary cities. But Denver Mayor Mike Johnston said that is a term that he rejects. He says Denver cooperates with ICE all the time, as long as federal officials have a warrant. That is something that is spelled out and required in both state and city law. This led to one of the more contentious moments in the hearing between Mayor Mike Johnston and Colorado Congresswoman Lauren Boebert.
we do coordinate with ICE presently. I'm happy to tell you what we do on that. So we've honored detainer requests more than 1,226 times over the last
What about
years.
before a warrant? There are many issues before a warrant.
So if what happens is if ICE has sends us a detainer request,
Well, you have local law enforcement officers, Mr. Mayor, who are unable to coordinate with ICE to even get the initial warrant.
And Johnston said to lawmakers that Denver has been able to really find a balance between offering resources to the thousands of immigrants that came to the city in recent years, but also making sure that criminal undocumented immigrants, those immigrants that come to the country and commit crimes, that they are rounded up and ultimately deported, that they help ICE to do that. Unlike a lot of lawmakers, Johnston stayed calm the whole time, spoke in very short answered and measured tones, realizing that there was really so much at stake. At the end of this, he said that he thought he did a good job and really expressing where Denver is coming from when it comes to these immigration policies.
I think we had the chance to explain what Denver does, why we think it's a common sense policy, why we think we've been able to successfully manage this crisis at the same time as reducing crime in the city. And so some folks weren't that interested in listening to answers, but some were. And so I felt like we got to make the case on behalf of Denver for why we think this policy works.
So now he flies back to Denver, and there is this question of what happens next. Republicans here on Capitol Hill have said that they want to restrict federal funding to any place that they deem a sanctuary city. I asked the mayor about that. I said, what would you do if that happens, given how much money the city relies on from Uncle Sam? He said if there was any attempt to restrict those federal funds, he would take Congress to court. Jacqueline, Shannon?
All right, we heard a very measured response from the mayor, but when we're talking about the attitudes that we saw there and the reception toward Mayor Johnston and Denver and how that compared to other cities and mayors that were represented, what did you see?
Well, compared to the other mayors, certainly Johnston was a little more reserved. We saw Boston's mayor, for example, really fighting back and challenging lawmakers. That is not the tack that Denver's mayor took. They had worked for a very long time getting prepared for this hearing, not trying to make any waves, realizing that they did not want to upset lawmakers that, again, at the end of the day, could try to restrict those federal funds. But at the same time, the mayor did want to make sure that he defended those policies that those lawmakers do deem as sanctuary city policies.
Patrick, we got a little taste from Comer and Boebert there, but by and large, did committee members
I'm live.
satisfied with Mayor Johnston's answers?
Well, it really depends on the committee members. Democrats, of course, came into this hearing saying that there was nothing to see here, and they were supporting Denver and other big cities. Republicans, on the other hand, they were visibly upset. They challenged all of these mayors time and time again. They're supposed to ask questions, but in some cases, they seemed more like speeches. It's really hard to imagine that they changed their minds on Denver or any of these other cities. This could just be the opening round of several ahead as they try to really fight back against these cities for what they deem as sanctuary city policies.
All right, Patrick Terpstra at the Capitol tonight. Thanks for reporting on that.
Good work, Patrick. The city.
Oh, I like this one.
From Florida.
Thank you, Chairman.
I love
this is my
him.
third term on the Oversight Committee. We've been talking about illegal immigration and oversight the entire time. I remember we had a group of this committee that went down to the El Paso section of the border. This was back in February, March of 2021. And during that time period, we were at one of the holding centers, and there were these buses that were coming to the detention facility, and they were picking up 30 kids, 50 kids at random, walking out of the facility. And when I went over to question the bus driver that was transporting these kids, border agents told me, as a member of Congress, that you're not allowed to question the bus driver. And of course, people knowing me, I didn't take no for an answer. And I repeated the question. And I was told that this bus of children was leaving El Paso and going to San Diego. And so what was occurring under the Biden administration is that they were busing unaccompanied minors all across the United States for one reason and one reason only. And that was because they did not want the press to see the pictures of kids in cages. They did not want to see our borders being overrun. They wanted to disperse that problem all through the United States. That is the reckless history of illegal immigration under Joe Biden and the Democrat Party. Mayor Johnston of Denver, you lamented earlier that there were 10 to 11 buses coming per day to your city. Did you ever talk to Joe Biden about why this was happening to your community?
Thank you, Congressman. I both reached out to Governor Abbott from Texas. He didn't respond, and I did.
Why would you reach out to Governor Abbott of Texas when it is Joe Biden, the former commander-in-chief, that opened up our borders? Why didn't you talk to him?
Well, our buses directly were being sent from Governor Abbott in Texas, so that was why we reached out to say we're happy to collaborate on a coordinated entry system. We understand no one state or no one city should bear the entire brunt of this, but let's collaborate. But I did.
So I'm glad you said that, because that brings me to my next point. Governor Abbott and Governor DeSantis, when they started moving illegal aliens out of their states who were bearing the brunt of what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were doing, and they've sent them to Denver, they sent them to Chicago, they sent them to New York, they sent them to Martha's Vineyard. The reason why they did that is because you four could hide behind the realities of illegal immigration on border towns all through our country and on cities and states who did not want to see illegal immigration, but did not have the political representation to go to the White House. And only when it showed up on your doorstep did you get upset. Mayor Johnston, coming back to you, how much did your city spend on illegal immigration? Do you have a round number?
Over the last couple of years on all newcomers, whatever their status was, it's around $79 million since 2022.
$79 million. Mayor Johnston, Chicago. How much has the city of Chicago spent on illegal immigration?
If you're referring to the 2022 up to 2024 of the buses coming from Texas, roughly the same percentage of the state of Texas, about 1% of our overall budget.
What is that? Because we don't have the city's budget in front of me. Numbers.
It's 1%, and if you want the actual calculation, we can make sure someone.
You're the mayor. You don't have the math in front of you.
It's 1% of the overall budget over the last 4 years.
That's why you're a failing
which
mayor.
Is
Mayor, the city of New York actually spent on illegal immigration. Mayor Johnson, I already asked you. You don't have a hard number, and if you don't have a hard number, you're not running your city well. Mayor Adams, how much did the city of New York actually spend on illegal immigration?
$6.9 billion of taxpayers.
$6.9 billion of taxpayer money on a problem that was fostered on the American people. Mayor Wu, in the city of Boston, how much did you spend?
We don't ask about immigration status and delivering citizens.
You don't ask about how much money the city of Boston has spent on illegal immigration? Are you out of your mind?
Between immigration status.
Do you manage your budget or not, Mayor Wu?
That is how we keep
Mayor
our
Wu,
safe.
do you manage your
budget
or not?
We have numbers to prove it. I manage my budget. I have a AAA bond rating dating back 10 years.
So to the city of Boston, just understand that your mayor does not care how much of your resources she has spent on people who are not citizens
of the city of Boston. Is sick of having people outside Boston telling us what
Mr. Bear, I have a question for you, because I understand Cato's perspective when it comes to illegal immigration. I understand that the Cato Institute for a long time has had a standard of actually having open immigration into the United States. Generally speaking, I don't want to get into specific.
We support legal immigration. We want immigration to be legal.
Let me ask you this question, because one of the great libertarians of the modern era, Milton Friedman, famously said, you can either have open borders or a welfare state, but you have to choose. Mr. Beer, what do you choose?
Milton Friedman said he wanted to allow illegal immigration to continue. I disagree with Milton Friedman's position on that. We should have legal immigration and build a wall around the welfare state, not around the country. That's in the best interest of taxpayers.
And I would argue that under the current system where you have sanctuary cities popping up, it is not possible to build that wall. So America has to choose, Mr. Beer, you're done. America has to choose between securing our nation or protecting the taxpayer. I choose secure the nation. I yield back.
Gentlemen, you.
Woo woo! Go on, Brian. I love him. I love him.
The 4 major U.S. cities, including Denver Mayor Mike Johnston, were in the hot seat on Capitol Hill today.
There was a hearing about so-called sanctuary cities and policies that limit cooperation with immigration and customs enforcement. Erica Brown has more from Capitol Hill.
Do you solemnly swear?
The mayors of New York, Denver, Chicago, and Boston testified before a House committee Wednesday where Republican lawmakers railed against so-called sanctuary city laws, which limit local cooperation with immigration and customs enforcement, or ICE.
Sanctuary cities make us all less safe and are a public safety nightmare.
Republicans argue the city's policies regarding undocumented immigrants allow dangerous criminals to go free, but the Democratic mayors push back on the idea that their cities are less safe.
A sanctuary city classification does not mean our city will ever be a safe haven for violent criminals.
Migrants did not bring a wave of crime to Denver. In fact, crime went down.
The mayors contend the policies, which are at odds with the Trump administration's mass deportation agenda, are necessary to ensure undocumented immigrants can report crimes and access services without fear.
Those fears cause witnesses and victims to avoid cooperating with police.
A city that's scared is not a city that's safe.
Some Democrats on the committee called out New York City Mayor Eric Adams after the Department of Justice dismissed a corruption case against him, saying the Trump administration is using the mayor for the president's immigration enforcement efforts.
Are you selling out New Yorkers to save yourself from prosecution?
There's no deal, no quid pro quo.
The mayors also used the hearing as an opportunity to call on Congress to fix the nation's broken immigration laws. Erica Brown, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
Mr. Chairman, and I would thank you for allowing me the opportunity to wave on to this important committee hearing today. I want to thank the witnesses. I represent a district right outside of Chicago, the excerpts of Chicago representing Rockford, Bloomington Normal, Peoria. And I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having this hearing. It's past time that individuals like the mayors we have before us come before us and explain to the American people why you continue to fail to enforce the laws of our country and allow illegal immigrants to flood into our communities. And it's clear to me that sanctuary city policies have significantly harmed our once great cities, which is very, very unfortunate. During my time as an elected official, I have strongly condemned the policy around sanctuary cities and the impact it's had on the state of Illinois. And I believe every sensible resident in Illinois knows these policies have further harmed the economy in Illinois, increased crime throughout our state, and endangered hardworking, law-abiding Illinois citizens. I want to turn my attention to you, Mayor Brandon Johnston of Chicago. As I've watched you over the last 2 years that you've been mayor, I've been amazed at how tone deaf you have been and how oblivious
Facts.
you've been to the decline of Chicago.
Facts.
And I say that looking objectively at a number of things. Out of control crime in Chicago, people scared throughout neighborhoods on the west side, south side, north side. Morale has never been lower with law enforcement and CPD. Record number of police officers leaving the force. We have been hemorrhaging people out of the city of Chicago to the suburbs and elsewhere where they feel safe. Record number of businesses fleeing the city of Chicago.
Facts.
You couple that with record deficits. $2 billion deficit, the $2 billion deficit line of credit that you just had to take out this week. But you've spent $300 million of taxpayer money on illegal immigrants. And when I think about all of those things and I look at the strategy you continue to take, I mean, you're putting the interest of illegal immigrants above the interest of taxpayers in Chicago.
Facts.
But you continue to go down this path. And for the life of me, I can't understand it. So, Mayor, tell me why you continue to put the interest of illegal immigrants above taxpayers in Chicago.
Facts.
Thank you for your representation. Violent crime is down in Chicago.
That's not the
Let me reclaim my
answer.
time. So I have a statistic here. Last year, Chicago had 573 murders.
Down.
Okay, but I want to compare that to the city of New York that is almost 2/3 the size of Chicago, 337 murders. So you had 573 murders in the city of Chicago, and you're 1/3 the size.
That's the lowest amount in 5 years under my leadership.
Okay, and you look at the level of violent criminals, sexual offenses, and drug dealers.
All violent crime is down in Chicago. In fact, just this year alone, Congressman, respectfully, there's a 20% decrease in violent crime in the city of Chicago.
I don't agree with your statistics.
Well, it's not a matter of whether or not you agree with it. It's a matter of whether it's
Let me reclaim my time, because I thought you might do this. And when I hear your answer, no one in this room should be surprised that your approval rating is 6.6%.
Facts.
Now, that's not just me saying this. Newsweek article, the least popular politician in America is Brandon Johnston. So, recent poll, M3 Strategies, conducted this February 20th to 21st, showed that Mayor Johnston has a 6.6% approval rating, the worst showing of any political figure in the country's history. So I know you're talking about crime is down and things are great and, you know, the city's flush with money. None of that is backed up by the people in the city of Chicago.
Facts.
And so I'm wondering why you continue to go down this path of failed policies, destruction to the city of Chicago, people fleeing, law enforcement at an all-time low. And I'm wondering if you have any remorse for that here today and can tell us why you continue to double down on these failed policies.
We've invested $1.25 billion for housing and economic development, particularly for Black Chicago. It's the largest investment in the history of Chicago. 45% increase in youth employment, particularly for Black and brown children. I will not apologize for my investments in the people of Chicago. We have one of the most diverse economies, the top universities. As violence continues to go down and investments continue to go up, that is what's most important. We've opened up 3 mental health clinics, the first mayor since the first Black mayor in the history of Chicago.
I'm going to reclaim my
invest in
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to reclaim my time.
in public health, and I will continue to
Your
make those investments.
approval rating speaks volumes.
Well, the people
So
that
does.
investments, and I will continue to make those investments.
You're going the wrong direction. You need to reverse your policies on sanctuary cities. That's what the election results were last year. Crime and
Is down in
immigration
Chicago.
were the #1 issue in the election from Republicans, Democrats.
Chairman, the gentleman's time.
We could use your help to actually help us continue to
No,
invest in
you
these,
need to.
programs that continue
No,
to drive
you gotta. You are the worst mayor in the country. You was at 14, now you at 6, and you still talking arrogant. Arrogant. I can't stand that man. This the last one because I wanted to end with this. This here, she got them together. She got them together. This the last video. I want to end with this right here. Get them together, girl. Get them
Chair
together.
now recognizes Ms. Luna from Florida.
Mayor Wu, does the Boston Trust Act restrict communication with federal immigration authorities regarding individuals' immigration status? Yes or no?
We do not collect immigration status in law enforcement.
I'd just like to point out, and Mr. Chairman, if I could enter the Boston Trust Act into the record. Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. On page, or let's see, section 4AA, a law enforcement official and employment of the city department, agency, or commission shall not, and then A, inquire of an individual on his or her immigration status. Under Title 8, U.S. Code subsection 1373 stipulates that local governments cannot prohibit or restrict communication with federal immigration authorities regarding individuals' immigration status. So your enforcement of this act is in direct violation of that statute. Can you please confirm?
That is not
Thank
the
you,
truth.
ma'am. That's a U.S. code. I don't know about you, but U.S. code does not lie.
We do not ask about
Mayor
immigration
Johnson,
status, and that is what
more.
makes us
Next
safe in the
question,
city.
Mayor Johnston. You said in your testimony that the first step you took after illegal aliens arrived was to provide them with housing. Is that correct? Yes or no?
Folks that were on the streets freezing to death, we gave access to shelter. Yes, we did.
Thank you. Not to be rude here, but you have a good understanding of what the definition of harboring is, correct?
I do.
Okay. For those that might not, harboring means to knowingly or recklessly provide shelter or place to stay for an illegal alien. And according to Title 8 of U.S. Code subsection 1324, that is also a federal crime. Just to be clear, did you also say that you would be willing to go to jail to stop deportation efforts?
I did say that I'd be willing to stand up for all of our residents, and the context was that was the point at which the administration was threatening to deploy the U.S. military to streets of our cities to pull kids out of schools and churches.
Thank
so we
you.
were worried about that.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record an article from CBS.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. In this, it says Johnston said earlier this week that he's willing to use civil disobedience and, if necessary, going to jail to stop deportations. My final question would be for you, Mr. Mayor Johnson. Do you believe that Chicago's welcoming city ordinance encourages illegal aliens to enter the United States, specifically into Chicago? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. So you don't believe that banning the transfer of individuals into ICE custody for the purpose of civil immigration enforcement encourages illegal immigration into Chicago? Or how about agencies, or agents not being able to stop, arrest, or detain individuals based solely on their immigration status or administrative warrant?
So we comply with all laws, local, state, and federal.
To me, after this line of questioning, it's very clear that these policies that you have all implicate are active and alive and well in your cities are in direct violation with U.S. Title 8 Code subsection 1324 and is a federal offense. but you all speak about a broken immigration system, and yet here you guys are aiding and abetting in that entire process. I want to be very clear about something. Open border policies, which is something that you guys are talking about, hurts people on both sides, meaning the people that are coming here illegally and then American citizens as well. I do not think you guys are bad people, but I think that you are ideologically misled, which is why, unfortunately, based on your responses, I'm all going to be criminally referring you to the Department of Justice for investigation. And as soon as I leave here, these will be going over to Pam Bondi. I'm not doing that in an effort to bully you guys, but I do believe that your policies are hurting the American people, and you can make that known with the evidence that you can present to the Department of Justice. But if you guys continue doing what you're doing, you're not going to help anyone. You're going to hurt more people, and that's exactly why I'm tired of it. The American people are tired of it. And Chairman, I yield my time.
Would you yield your last minute?
Yes, sir.
But Mayor Adams, you were one of the first mayors in what the media refers to as a blue city, typically, that came out and raised concerns about the influx of illegals pouring into the city of New York. Could you answer the question what that did to New York City from a budgetary standpoint? Let's not even talk about crime or anything. Let's just talk about from a budgetary, the burden on the citizens of New York City.
As I indicated, Mr. Chairman, we spent $6.9 billion, and the long-term impact of that is extremely significant. After COVID, we had a large number of children who was chronically absent. We could have taken $200 million of that and dealt with that. We have a real mental health crisis in our city. We could have spent hundreds of millions of dollars on that. And so the long-term impact of spending $6.9 billion is going to have serious ramification on the future of New York City. So it's more than just what happened last year or this year. It is what is going to impact us long term.
And I think that's one of the purposes of this hearing, to talk about the consequences from cities that have huge illegal alien populations. So, Chair Neville.
That was a great hearing. I watched the whole thing all day today. That was a great hearing. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. I just wanted to get that out, and I wanted to end with that video. Yeah, they going under investigation, as they should, because they put illegals over their constituents, the people in their city, and they did do that. Have a good night. I'm coming right